Finally, the weekend is over. It is Monday night, and you know what that means. It is time for another episode of The Leak. My name is Maddy Weeks, and tonight we're going to be looking at the upcoming federal election. And I know what you're probably thinking. Oh my god, shit, the federal election! But don't stress, the election actually isn't until May 2020. But we here at The Leak, we pride ourselves on breaking the news early. We pride ourselves on being ahead of the curve. And we are on Channel 31, so just in case our broadcast license is cut before then, we wanted to get in an episode about the federal election while we still can. While topics like the budget and federal elections can be very boring and a bit dry, I thought it might be good to, spice things up tonight with a bit of trivia. The game is called Pauline, Palmer or Producer. The best part is you get to play along at home. The game is simple. I'll read out a quote and you have to guess if it's a quote from Pauline Hanson, whose One Nation Party are currently up for re-election, Clive Palmer, whose United Australia Party are also up for re-election, or if it's just something made up by my producer, who's not currently running in politics. Here's the first quote. I believe we are in danger of being swamped by Asians. Who said that? That's right, folks. Pretty easy one. That's a Pauline Hanson gem from her back catalogue. Oh my god. Moving on. Prime Minister Scott Morrison, #ScoMo, was in the news recently. I mean, he's always in the news, isn't he? And always for the wrong reasons. He's the gift that keeps on giving. He's such an easy target that I don't really even want to talk about him. But we are talking about the federal election, so we can't really leave out dear old ScoMo. In a recent interview on 3AW, ScoMo was asked a very simple question. Prime Minister Scott Morrison, have you ever told a lie in public life? His response was, I don't believe I have. No. Scotty, I guess the irony to that is that he just told a lie. If in doubt, just ask French President Emmanuel Macron, who's recently been not so thrilled with Scotty's truth-telling abilities regarding a little submarine deal between the two countries. Come on, Scotty. You don't remember this?
I explained very clearly that the conventional submarine option was not going to meet Australia's interests.
You told the French president that this deal was not going ahead. Is that what you said?
No, I didn't say that.
Well, this?
Prime Minister, you said earlier today you've never lied in public life. Is that really true?
That's what I believe to be true. And if, what are you suggesting? When do you think I did?
Or even this?
Oh, he's lied to me on many occasions.
Well, that's only the tip of the iceberg. Or the tip of the melting iceberg, if Scotty gets his way. Speaking of melting icebergs, climate change is going to be one of the big issues in the next federal election. Shameless self-promotion incoming, warning. Cast your minds back. And look back to season 10, episode 1 of The Leak. And in hindsight, our episode about climate change and our predictions for COP26 were, unfortunately, spot on. It's depressing. Anyway, it's time for another Pauline, Palmer or Producer. The quote is, the Chinese government wants to bring workers here to destroy our wage system. They want to take over our ports and get our resources for free. So far, they've shifted $200 million worth of iron ore out of this country without paying for it. I don't mind standing up against the Chinese bastards and stopping them from doing it. Who said that? That's right, this time it's a gem from none other than Clive Palmer. Are these seriously our politicians? I am concerned, but I'm just glad it's not my producer saying these things. Anyway, maybe we need an alternative to our current politicians. Back in 1992, Texan industrialist Ross Perot ran as an independent for the United States presidency. In 1996, he ran a third-party campaign. More recently, Donald Trump won the nomination at the Republican Party and then became president. And now, we have an unusual choice, throwing her hand up to become Prime Minister of Australia, Margaret Court. We welcome her political campaign manager, Sharon, to speak on her behalf.
Thanks for having me, Maddy.
Yeah, okay. So what's prompted old Margaret to run?
Margaret's actually written exactly what I need to say. She doesn't like people to speak for themselves, if you know what I mean. So let me just read this to you straight from the horse's mouth. The moral decay of the Australian people. Liberal views are damaging the fabric of society. We need to return to good old-fashioned values.
And what values are those?
Marriage, for example.
Marriage isn't a value, it's a status.
Well, unfortunately, my status is flat broke after my wife and I went way over budget on our wedding. Don't tell Cordy. Wow, actually that was a huge overshare. Please cut that. You really need to cut that. Margaret cannot know that I am a lesbian. She'll fire me, and I desperately need this job because we are way in debt. Weddings are expensive. Oh, anyway, sorry, Margaret did write a response for that. Marriage is a sacred union in the eyes of God. Now we've allowed same-sex marriage. Oh God, I hate my job. But you know what? Lightning be striking me all day long these days. It's really exciting. It keeps me warm. Electricity bills very small.
You say it's a sacred union, but in today's societies, divorces are hitting almost 50%.
Yes. Hold on. This is due to moral sacrilege, and you know what's responsible.
You're saying same-sex marriage is impacting heterosexual marriages?
We're seeing a breakdown of civilization as we know it, Maddie. Where do you think coronavirus came from? I think she's implying HPV. I literally don't know what she means. I'm sorry.
Seriously? You think it was same-sex marriage?
Hold on, she's written something. You let sin and debauchery in, and that's what happens. We need to rebuild society in God's image. Hopefully with peace and love, I don't know.
Okay, well, how does Margaret intend to tackle an issue such as unemployment?
Dissolve same-sex marriage.
Okay, how about domestic violence?
Dissolve same-sex marriage.
Okay, refugees and asylum seekers.
Dissolve same-sex marriage.
Okay. How about climate change?
Dissolve same-sex marriage.
Okay, how about same-sex marriage?
Let's not get fixated here, Maddie. Not like Margaret is.
Oh my God. Okay, well, what is Margaret's solution then?
Build a wall around Tasmania and ship them all there.
Okay, politely, please get stuffed.
Totally fair. If it makes you feel any better, I am terrible at my job.
Oh my God, what a freaking nightmare. Anyway, we'll be back after this short ad break. Did the Australian public become disenfranchised with ScoMo during COVID? Well, most people I spoke with felt the same way. They felt as if ScoMo was nowhere to be seen during the pandemic, and that he left the handling and leadership of the pandemic completely in the hands of the state leaders. That makes me wonder, is this going to hurt ScoMo when we all line up at the polling booths, our democracy sausage sizzles in hand? Oh my God. I'm so excited. There's only one thing that's better than a budding snag, and that's an election day snag. Anyway, it's now time for another round of Pauline, Palmer, or Producer. The quote is, immigration is a real problem. Not just people either, aliens too, who are coming around and wreaking havoc. Who said that? I really thought this was going to be from Pauline or maybe even Palmer, but it turns out this one was actually just made up by my producer. Sad thing is, I would not have put it past Pauline or Palmer to have said that though. Back to federal election talk. My gosh. Recently, the Morrison government has put forward voter ID laws. Another one of the big issues of the next federal election. In a nutshell, the proposed new laws would mean that you would need to show some sort of identification before you vote. As it currently stands, you don't need to show any identification. And the reasoning given by the Morrison government in the support of these laws is that it's a security measure that would negate fraudulent voting. The negatives from those opposing it are that these laws would discriminate against certain groups in the community and ultimately reduce the amount of voters on polling day. It makes sense, not everyone has identification. And the groups of most concern are the young and the elderly, as well as other marginalised communities. It's also been pointed out that there would be quite a cost involved with all of this. And evidence points to these laws being superfluous, as Australia doesn't have a problem with voter fraud. And it's all eerily similar to the unfounded claims Trump made about voter fraud in the US after the last US election. Like, should we be spending money on something like this? Isn't there a nuclear submarine we could spend all our hard-earned dosh on? What about spending money on something like, I don't know, something a little bit more useful, like maybe a carousel to accommodate our cavalcade of prime ministers? Now let's dive into the nitty-gritty of the budget, hey? Let's scroll down the Excel sheet of the nation and run through the incomings and outgoings. Nah, I'm just joking. That would make me fall asleep. But I will pose one question on the budget. Given the massive decline in the economy throughout the pandemic and all of the outgoing COVID support payments, will ScoMo and Josh Frydenberg be able to make it work? Will the Australian people cut them some slack, given the years we've had, or not? Here's an idea. Maybe they could mandate a national pay cut among politicians. Let's pump that money into the economy rather than the idiocracy, hey? What are the odds looking like for a Labor victory in the upcoming election? Given ScoMo's trips abroad, Christian rock playlists, and general cluelessness, you'd think Labor leader Anthony Albanese would be in with a good chance. Is he the leader Labor has been looking for? Is he the leader the country is demanding? I can't help but think back to Labor leaders like Gough Whitlam, the People's Champion Bob Hawke and Paul Keating, and well, to say things went downhill from then is flattering. Things fell off a cliff for Labor. To explain further, we're crossing to Grace.
Hello, Grace Grimley here, Museum Director. I'm here to celebrate the second best of Labor leadership at the ALP Museum of Eternal Opposition Leaders. Because you can't have the best without second best. We've got loving tributes to all opposition leaders who never got to be Prime Minister, most of whom lasted longer in their roles than the actual Prime Minister did. Come marvel at our full-size statue of Arthur Colwell, cast in the whitest marble on earth, just as he wanted, still defending the White Australia policy in his own way. You'll have a blast with our full-size Kim Beazley animatronic, programmed with the ability to engage in conversation. He'll always agree with you on the things that he's meant to oppose. Gaze in bewilderment at the number of portraits of Bill Shorten we have, gazing into the distance as he tries to remember what he has to say. Did somebody say Simon Crean? Nobody ever says Simon Crean. A Mark Latham exhibit, you say? Yes, we do have composting toilets available on site. Stay for the achingly granular 5-hour video of the ALP faction system. It's what's made the party it is today. Bring the family, make a day of it. Dine at our a la carte restaurant where spirit-crushing defeat never tasted so good. recreate the party splits of 1960, 1931, and 1955 on our tug-of-war course. Find out why Australia's oldest opposition party has spent the most time in opposition since World War II. It's the constant factional bullshit. We've simply got too much integrity. Please come taste the fruits of endless factional wars at the ALP Museum of Eternal Opposition Leaders. Because even bitter fruits become palatable after you've eaten them for so long.
Thanks for that, Grace. We're again joined by political campaign manager Sharon Gray. Awesome, yeah, cool. Who seems to be representing a new political candidate after Margaret Court, unsurprisingly, dropped out of the race. Another surprise candidate to emerge is none other than Rupert Murdoch. Surprising because, he's got all of the other candidates in the palm of his crusty old hand. Whoop.
He must be referred to as Sir Rupert Murdoch.
Oh, hey Sharon, sorry. Yeah, all right, well, let's get onto it. Murdoch's long been considered a power broker in politics, a kingmaker through his vast media empire. What do you have to say about that?
Sir Rupert's media empire has done nothing but report the facts as we observe them.
Some people have accused his media empire of having an agenda.
Hold on. He has written me some copy for these kind of questions. We're about nothing but the facts as we observe them.
Okay, so Murdoch's never sensationalised?
Only news that is sensational.
Okay, well, what would Rupert Murdoch offer us as the Prime Minister of Australia?
Sir Rupert would offer something that Australia has lacked for decades now. Vision.
But what does Murdoch even stand for?
The Australian dream. I'm so glad he wrote me notes. I'd be lost without them.
These are all very vague and non-committal generalisations. You know that, right?
The Sunday Times endorses Sir Robert's political aspirations.
What? The Sunday Times is an American newspaper. What weight does it hold in Australian politics?
I have no idea. But,
Wait. Doesn't Murdoch own the Sunday Times?
yes. No. Oh, I don't think I'm supposed to talk about that. The National Geographic also endorses Rupert. Sir Rupert.
What does the National Geographic have to do with Australian politics?
The Australian also endorses Sir Rupert.
Aren't you just naming all the media entities that Murdoch owns?
Media entities that report the facts.
Sharon, thanks for joining us, I think. And I also think that you should really think about stopping your career as a political campaign manager, Sharon, because you're pretty bad at it.
Yeah, my soul is dying.
Huh. We'll be right back after this short ad break. We here at The Leak were lucky enough to interview Dr. Kathryn Daley. Dr. Daly is a senior lecturer at RMIT and the Program Manager of the Bachelor of Youth Work and Youth Studies. She is interested in good, just and equitable policy and how it impacts those on the margins. All right, Kathryn Daley, welcome to The Leak.
Hi, thanks for having me.
Yeah, you're so welcome. Thank you so much for chatting with us. So, I know we're a little bit ahead of the curve talking about the federal election, which will be happening about May 2022, but we've already seen a lot of political campaigns begin. So I just want to ask you, is there an issue in particular one that impacts younger people that you feel has been underrepresented in previous elections?
Yes, although it's not a specific topic issue. Whenever we hear about young people at elections, it's almost always about young people's problems. At state elections, it's often crime. Victorian elections are usually fought and won on being tough on crime, which is often focused on, youth crime. And federally, crime's less of an issue, but you just don't see much for young people. And when people, when there is initiatives for youth, often it's, youth mental health or, youth housing, which, is a good thing. Like, it's not a critique of that. But I think the big thing that's missing from, any election campaigning for as long as I can remember is initiatives that open up opportunities for young people. So rather than kind of going, oh, what are the problems with young people and how can we fix them? It's, looking ahead, looking at how can we make the future better for today's young people, or what pathways can we have, or, improving opportunity and access to things. So, whether that be education or housing or graduate employment options. It's never canvassed as a policy issue. I don't think people even consider it as a policy issue because it's just never put on the table.
Gosh, it's disappointing but not surprising, hey? Oh my gosh. So we've got time for one more question. Thank you so much, by the way. Finally, how much impact do you think COVID-19 circumstances will have on the election? Could it sway the election, and should we be letting COVID-19 circumstances dictate our vote?
I definitely think it's it's the biggest thing that's happened in most people's whole lives, and it's definitely the biggest thing that's happened in everyone's life since the last election.
Yeah.
So whether people are aware of it or not, they're definitely going to they've been impacted by COVID, and that's going to have shaped their views, their participation in society, their employment, their income, all sorts of things. But so it's definitely going to impact the election. It's going to impact different groups differently. Now, it should probably, young people should be most invested in this, in terms of what are you going to do to try and alleviate this future economic debt that we have to carry. And, at the same time, young people's university educations is, slowly being more and more privatised. When we see the higher ed reforms came through this year, university debt is becoming a big thing for young people. And that was kind of really slipped through COVID. So a lot's happened to young people, but because they've always been given the short straw, my hunch is that they're probably going to vote less on COVID-related policies, because there's just when your whole life as a young person, you just get whatever the government gives you, which is not much, and your expectations are so low. Whereas older age groups whose superannuation might have taken a hit, or who have had to delay retirement, and who the economic impacts of COVID are going to be much more immediate, they can't. My hunch is they will are more likely to change their vote on COVID-related policies. Then you look at the broader issues, things like this COVID has highlighted inequalities in society. So the lockdowns of the Flemington estates last year, suddenly it thrust public housing into the eye, whereas that's never been a vote changer for people, whereas now people understand it a bit more. And so some social affairs issues like that, health, people have learned a lot more about the health system than perhaps we ever needed to know, and we now understand that increasing beds is an increasing staff, and that we need to invest in training, whether or not any of the governments will run with that, or whether or not that will change votes, my hunch is they'll be doing opinion polls to kind of test the waters. But these are issues that will be new to people because of COVID.
Yeah, absolutely. All right. Well, thank you so much. This has been so insightful. Kathryn Daley, thank you so much for joining us on The Leak.
Thank you.
Massive thank you once again to Dr. Kathryn Daley. From everybody here at The Leak, we really appreciate you giving us your time. It's easy for politicians to look their best under optimal conditions, but between bushfires, COVID, labour shortages, and everything else in the last 2 years, we've seen how our politicians react to different conditions. We've seen how they handle crises, how they take care of all of us, and how they see the future. Think about that when you cast your vote. The responsibility is yours. Make sure you enroll to vote, that your address is updated, and you do your research before you vote. Anyway, that's all the time that we have on The Leak this week. Thank you so much for watching. I've been Maddy Weeks. Enjoy the rest of your night. Bye!